I never thought that I'd be making a video response to Unnatural Vegan, responding to D'Angelo Wallace, responding to that vegan teacher. It is currently almost 1 a.m. I'm sitting in my bedroom and I was watching Unnatural Vegan's newest video. And there's something that she said in there that really didn't gel with me. And it upset me to begin with. And I was like, I'm pissed. I'm going to scream and shout at the internet and try to get it cancelled. Right? I have been watching her for quite a long time. Unnatural Vegan is someone who has been a massive influence on my life. She inspired me to go vegan for a solid 6 month period. I couldn't do it mostly because I'm poor and the alternatives are always expensive. I'm a university student. She inspired me to reduce my animal product intake as much as possible and look for alternatives where I can. And I try and limit my meat consumption and animal product consumption as much as possible. She has definitely inspired me to do that. The way she talks about veganism, the way she's an advocate for it, I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, I'm still an omnivore or a reducitarian or whatever you want to call it. But I need to talk about some of the stuff that happened in this video because she does some comparisons and she talks about some stuff that I can't agree with, and I found it quite upsetting. So I'm going to show you guys the clip that kind of kicked this whole thing off, where she started responding to it, and then I will kind of just jump in and add my commentary when needed.
She got tagged in a video that she didn't like and immediately compared it to racism, homophobia, and sexism. Clearly you have never experienced racism. If your first thought is, hey, this is just like racism. Being vegan is definitely a choice. It's definitely not on the same level as other forms of bigotry.
Have you experienced vegan phobia? If not, does that disqualify you from talking about it? Because if it does, what is the point of this?
I don't think just because you haven't experienced it does not mean you can't talk about it. And I don't think that's what D'Angelo is saying. What I think he's saying here is that you're comparing vegan phobia with homophobia or racism. And those issues are systemically worse than what vegans have faced. You go on to say this next part.
Vegans are well known as being a hated group, and while it has finally become socially unaccepted, at least in most developed parts of the world, to express anti-gay sentiment, expressing hatred of vegans is not only acceptable, but actively cheered on by a lot of people.
There's two things that I want to talk about in this part. You make the assumption that generally in developing worlds, or the developed world, that queer people or expressing anti-queer sentiment is, for the most part, looked down upon. And I just have to disagree with you there. That is blatantly not true. Our lives, our identities, the people who we love and how we express ourselves are constantly questioned by the public and society at large. And for you to make that assumption, I just think that it's blindsided. Now, the second part that I want to talk about is you kind of make a comparison that for the most part, it's okay and gay people have been accepted, but vegans, that's actively looked down upon and sort of mocked about. And I have to disagree with that comparison, and here's why. I think vegans are well known for being a hated group for these reasons specifically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but people see them as being annoying, forcing their ideas down your throat, bad activism or in-your-face activism, promoting health nut or fad dieting quack bullshit, which you talk about on your channel quite a lot. All their concerns or the moral concerns about veganism aren't taken seriously by the general public. I now want to substitute the word queer into that exact same statement. So queer people are well known for being a hated group for these reasons: not having the same rights as straight people, being murdered for the ones we love or just expressing who we are, historically second-class citizens, discriminatory laws, social ostracization, unable to hide who we are from the world, systemic oppression. What I think you're doing in this part is implying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that vegan phobia is more prevalent and more socially accepted than homophobia or queer phobia, and that it's somehow worse. I'm not here to be like, this is the oppression Olympics and we have it worse. But when you make that comparison, it for me, you do not understand the social issues that queer people face daily. Now, that's the last part's kind of like whatever, but it's this part of the video that you talk about that really struck a nerve with me, and I had to take a break, go for a walk, take a few deep breaths, and then come back to this with a fresh mind to sit down and try and understand what you're saying so that I can at least voice my concerns to you. I don't want this to be I hate you, because I genuinely like your channel and your content. But I just want to say, as a queer person who has been following you for a very long time, I would like to talk to you or communicate with you in a way why I'm upset. And hopefully you can see some validity in my arguments.
Being vegan is definitely a choice. It's definitely not on the same level as other forms of bigotry.
Veganism is a choice, sure, and that obviously makes it different from racism and sexism. But homophobia? Having that orientation isn't a choice, but obviously being in a gay relationship is a choice.
I don't know if you just heard yourself then, but choosing to be in a queer relationship is a choice. What are we going full like evangelical Christian, hate the sin, not the person? I don't even know how to respond to this because I'm genuinely upset. You expect queer people to not enter queer relationships because it's a choice to do that? Like, it comes off kind of victim blaming that we're bringing the homophobia and queerphobia on ourselves because we choose to be in these relationships, right? Would you ever conceive of the notion that you shouldn't have a partner because that's a choice? I just don't think that you would take that argument seriously. And I don't understand why you expect us to take it seriously either.
Even the most conservative evangelical out there will acknowledge that humans have desires, and sometimes they're homosexual ones, and they'll say to repress it and marry a woman anyway. God's testing you or whatever, or it's Satan's influence, that sort of shit. Again, sexual orientation isn't a choice, but that's not what these bigots, that's not what these Christians are going after. That's not what they're calling sinful. They're calling gay sex, gay relationships, sinful.
I genuinely don't know why you're talking about the bigot or the Christian bigot point of view in terms of homophobia, because there's a lot of different types of queerphobia, and you do not need to be religious and to hold queerphobic remarks. And I do not know why you're trying to bring this up in terms of it's the same as choice in terms of being a vegan. I guess that it's not really a choice for you because it's the moral conclusion of your actions, right? But you've talked about multiple times on your channel that some people cannot go vegan for health reasons or other, right? So I just don't know why you're making this comparison. To me, or talking about this, to me it just comes off as you kind of passing on or putting the stamp of approval on this kind of bullshit.
And more specifically, the unrepentant action. This is where they are able to justify the actions of some of their anti-gay pastors, right? Who are caught in a gay brothel or whatever, right? No. That's different from the man who's out and out gay and in a full-on relationship. I'm an atheist. I don't believe any of this, and I think homophobia is wrong regardless, whether you're talking about choice or not.
So why bring up and cast doubt that homophobia is actually a choice? That we choose to be in these relationships and that we kind of bring the homophobia on ourselves in a sense.
But it really suggests that he is just not very familiar with the opposition by saying that homophobia is not related to choice.
The point you're making is that D'Angelo is not familiar with the opposition's point of view and therefore doesn't understand that homophobia or the point of view of being homophobic is actually about focusing on the choice to pursue those relationships. Because homophobia comes in, or queerphobia more specifically, comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes. It's not specifically just that. People do in fact hate us just for our orientation. People hate us for how we look, how we dress, how we talk, our culture. Like, I don't understand this notion that that's the root cause of homophobia, because it's just not. Christianity has played a significant role in promoting homophobic ideas, but it is not us choosing to pursue those relationships why people hate us exclusively. If anyone in this whole discussion doesn't know the opposing side's reasons for hating us, it's probably you.
But let's ignore that. Let's just pretend that homophobes really do go after the urge. That's what they hate is the sexual orientation part. Okay, what about religious bigotry? Religion is even more of a choice. People change their religions all the time, moving from one to another or becoming atheist or even atheist to Christian or whatever. It's very much a choice.
I watched this part or this portion of the video like multiple times, and I legitimately do not know what you're talking about here in terms of religious bigotry. As in, like, people unfairly treating people for their religion? I don't understand. I don't understand how this relates with homophobia and people being homophobic.
She very much frames it as a choice to be oppressed. Just listen.
LGBTQ, we support you, but if you don't like oppression, why the f*** aren't you vegan yet?
How is that not a red flag?
She's talking about oppression of animals, of non-human animals within animal agriculture. You support oppression of others by buying those products. If categorically you don't like oppression, then why are you supporting oppression?
Queer people are being murdered for being queer. That's just the fact. Some of us has the capacity and the resources to be vegan. Others don't. I don't have the resources. I don't have the mental capacity. I don't have enough space on my plate, what I've got going on in life, to make those dietary changes. I am reducing as much as I can at the moment. I plan on going vegetarian and then skipping to veganism. To be like, well, if you're against oppression against yourselves, then why aren't you vegan? Is not a helpful point to make in this discussion. Like, as I said before, queer people are dying in the streets. You're kicking at a group of people that are already marginalized in society, don't have the resources or the capacity to take on extra mental stress about knowing about factory farming and trying to change their diet to... Like, it's like you live in this land where everyone has this equal access to everything. Everyone has the same income. Queer people are statistically worse off than straight people, financially and with their mental health. Like, I get it. I understand the moral arguments for veganism. But to like shit on queer people, I just really am not... This is like the first time that I'm really quite upset with you.
Coming out as a member of the LGBTQ community is an entirely selfish act. Whoa, this is actually homophobic. I didn't read the whole thing. Coming out as an animal rights activist is talking about the animals, others, not just you. In fact, it is a completely unselfish thing to do. So she's fully homophobic.
Oh my God, the selfish thing. It's biting her in the ass every single time. You cannot say someone is selfish for coming out. You are saying to most people that someone is bad for coming out. Again, I don't think that's the way she's using selfish, going by everything that she said, and obviously she supports gay rights, so that wouldn't really make sense.
Look, I genuinely think that you're trying to take the most charitable impression, and that's why I admire what you do on your channel for quite a while, and I'm trying to do the same here. I probably have failed because I'm quite emotional and quite upset about this. But you're presuming the way that she's using selfish is purely in a neutral connotation and not a negative one. And the way that I've seen her use it, and my interpretation of it, it's not purely just neutral. And I think you're just being a little too charitable with her.
She explains here in this paragraph that she means coming out is about you, yourself. But, again, she doesn't necessarily do this very well. She doesn't frame it well at all. Again, I wish she would just stop using the word selfish, at all. It's just upsetting people. But it's not homophobic the way she's using it.
I'm glad you can be the arbiter of what's homophobic for queer people. We're in great hands. That was petty. Oof.
Very likely wrong, though, even going by her neutral, selfish usage. Coming out as gay isn't necessarily about you. It can be about being authentic and honest to your family and friends for their sake. It can be about your partner and wanting to share your love for them publicly and to marry. Those are all other directed motivations.
I mean, I am happy that we agree on one thing here, that her use of that in that paragraph was not particularly effective at communicating her cause. But like, what I feel like you're not considering is the effect that it has on queer people. Like I said before, I have watched you for a very long time. And I'm giving you the benefit of a doubt here. I just want to communicate to you why I'm upset. And hopefully you can see that through this video and it hasn't just been too much of me ranting and being emotional. If you did watch this, thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, peace.